Ah, the lovely crackle of a microphone cable that is in disrepair and a tube amplifier. That brings us into, finally, part 3 of Blues Harp. So some things to talk about today, and we'll get to hopefully everything I promised in just a moment. Okay, it's finally here. A couple of quick apologies. First of all, it took a while to get here, and that is for a number of reasons. I don't have a studio here yet out in the country where we are now living, and it's been a great time to restart this channel and put up some great stuff, work on videos, but we're on quarantine, right? So I'm with my whole family as well. We have a daughter still living at home, my wife, a mother-in-law, a dog, an active farm community around here. So when you think, hey, what a great time it would be to shoot some video, it isn't always the best time. So today I happen to be alone for a little bit, and we're going to try to get this banged out. But the reason it's taken so long, I think almost a month now or whatever, to get this third part of the series done is that. Some of the other things I can do quicker, I can do in the middle of the night when everybody's sleeping, but this one needed me to plug in and play through an amplifier and do some stuff that required a quiet set, which today we have. The second apology. I messed up pretty good when I told you guys about Cross Harp. So to redeem my image here, I do understand it. I do know how it works. I've been doing this for years, but also I don't normally work with a script. I've got a bunch of notes today to make sure I stay on the path. But explaining it to somebody else when you're used to just picking up a harp that goes with a certain song, goes with a certain key, I messed up. And as soon as I recognized that, 17 minutes into the video or whatever, man, do I have to do this all over again? I decided not to, and I pinned a note to the top of part 2 that says, I told you exactly backwards. But just to be super clear, I told you exactly backwards the formula for cross harp. Okay, the other thing is I always think of this as first position for me because I always start in cross harp almost all the time. I never play, in the standard key. Not usually doing like folky or major melody things. So I think of that as first position, and then third position is second position. But really, first position is the key of the harp. Second position is cross harp, etc., etc. So anyway, for all those reasons and more, I messed up. What you want to do is count up 5 from the key of the harp, right? So a C harp would be used in G, C, D, E, F, G, or 4 from the key that you want to play in. I told you the exact opposite. All right, so if you're in the key of G, G, A, B, C, right? Okay. When you start getting into flats and that sort of thing, you may have to figure that out. But basically, it's 4 up, 4 whole steps from the key you want to play in, 5 up from the key of the harp, and that's your cross harp formula. And again, in part 2, I pinned a Google search to 100 different charts you can use for that formula. And I'll do the same thing on this video so you can just see what it looks like because that sometimes is easier. All right, but that takes the standard harmonica and lays out a Mixolydian scale, which is basically the blues scale. And you get what you need to play simple blues riffs in any key, right? You can experiment with other things from there. There are other formulas, there are other positions. But to get to basic blues harp, you need to know cross harp. And then you need to work on some of those basics that we talked about. So get your rhythm down first, or at least concurrently with learning single notes. Play shuffle and straight like we talked about. Pick a harp that you like the sound of, or some harps that you like the sound of. I have 2 with me today, and they're both Hohner. One is a key of C, so we were playing in G, right? Blues Bender, and the other is the cheapy Hohner Hot Metal, but the Hot Metal actually sounds a lot more like the Special 20. So it's got a similar comb, I think. So that's kind of what I was playing today, or what I will be playing today. But pick some harps that are good for you, that sound good, that you like. I also mentioned I love Lee Oscars, and I do have a bunch of those. They're kind of expensive, and I'm still learning how to work on them. So if they go out of tune a little bit, I'm out of luck. I'm out of a lot of money. So sometimes I pick the cheaper ones just because I'm cheap. The other thing with the blues harp, the original Hohner blues harp, which is supposed to be easier to learn to bend on, and now the blues bender, right? The problem with these is when you learn to bend, and like I play with a lot of force, right? Especially in the draw notes. It's easier to bend the blues bender or the blues harp. So once you start doing that, and you're used to trying it on other harps where you play with a pretty good amount of draw force, I almost died a bunch of times swallowing, almost swallowing, thankfully not swallowing, but getting a mouthful of metal reeds from the harp because they were bending right out and breaking off. So choose wisely. Once you do learn to bend, you probably want to get off the easy to bend harps and get to something else so that you don't die. Or at least have a very uncomfortable hospital experience. And then you say, no, I was playing harmonica. So that's an important thing to know about choosing a harmonica. As you get more advanced, some people get into custom harps. I haven't done that yet just because, again, I don't have the money to work with some of these boutique guys. But some of the good players have learned to do a lot of work on them as well, figured out what epoxy they can use to seal all the airways without, killing you. All kinds of different modifications they make to the harps to make them really, really, really airtight, which makes it easier to play, which makes the bends easier to get to, which is how a lot of the great players are seemingly effortlessly doing some of the licks that they do. Also, of course, it's practice and skill. I'm not taking away from that. But you notice that a lot of them do play custom harps, and there's a reason for that. But for those of you that are like me, don't want to spend too much money, you'll either stick with basically Hohner or Lee Oscar, which is a great brand, and pick something that sounds good to you and that you like the feel of. The original Marine bands, I don't like. Some people love them, and most of the classic traditional blues players played the Marine band harmonica. I don't like that wood strip, that taste in my mouth. I just don't like it. So you have to decide for yourself. So one thing I never covered was holding the harmonica. Silly teacher. So let's do that now. Okay, if you're right-handed, you're going to use your left hand to make a C clamp. Fit it right in there, so your thumb underneath, your forefinger on top, little space back there, right? And your right hand, your thumb's going to go on the outside, and then just cover the back. That gives you a little bit deeper sound, your tone as you cover the back, and also it lets you do a technique we're going to go over, fanning or wah-wah. Right? Okay. So that's the basic hold. Now, if you're left-handed, you can switch the other way. You can hold with your right and cover with your left. Doesn't matter. Okay. So, fanning, wah-wah. You may have heard trumpet players use a wah-wah effect with a mute. Or you may have heard guitar players do wah-wah, which is an electronic version of that sound. Or it started way back with like volume control manipulation. But all of that is basically sort of a manipulated vibrato on the back of the harp just by moving your hand. So start with a single note. Don't bend or do any tremolo or anything like that. Just hold it. And then while you're doing that, fan this hand or move it back and forth over that chamber. Right? And the speed of the hand will determine how much wave or tremolo you have, vibrato you have in the sound. Okay, so that's an important technique and a basic one to get basic, more advanced, I don't know. It's one that you see a lot of people use. It's much easier to do and probably more appropriate for playing acoustically than when you've got a mic because you got to hold the mic, you got to grip it in there, but we'll talk about that a little later. All right, there's something called throat vibrato, and that is easy to hear, but very hard to explain. You are going to try to work the muscles in your throat here and try to get this section, your muscles, your Adam's apple, to just kind of jump up and down. And that creates a vibrato, a very kind of guttural, very unique to the harmonica vibrato sound. So let's see what we can do with it here. There's my single note, right? Hear that? If you can, that kind of a thing. Okay, I know this is weird without a harmonica in your mouth, but if you can do that, kind of make this jump a little bit, right? But without moving your lips, just your throat, and do that while you are drawing or blowing, preferably drawing, because then you can also add a bend in later. You're going to get throat vibrato. Try saying to yourself, maybe without moving your lips as much as possible, like a ventriloquist, try saying gug gug, because that's kind of where it's coming from. Okay, so that's throat vibrato. Add that with some fanning or wah-wah, and you've got some more interesting lines you can play. There are also partial chords and splits, octaves you can play. And that is by virtue of the way the harp is laid out, it just kind of comes out naturally. If, let's say you want to play this low note here at position 1, you just kind of block with your tongue the 2 or 3 in between, you will get some partials. So instead of a single note here, or this whole chord, put your tongue right in the middle, right? So those are some things you can add to spice up your solos and your lines and your fills. All right, so once you practice those, you practice your single notes, you practice your rhythm, you practice your bending your single notes, right? We talked about the pressure you have to apply to do that. You practice fanning, wah-wah, you practice throat vibrato, and your octaves, then you are good to go as far as trying to play along with some music. And you can do that before then, of course. What you want to do is find some resources. First of all, if you get a bunch of harmonicas, you can just kind of fish around with some of your recordings, or if you have a blues program that you listen to, try to find one that fits in the key of whatever's playing. You don't necessarily have to know what it is. Sometimes it's fun to try to find the key, right? And play along. There are also some resources, though, and I told you that I would give you some resources to look at. So let's take a look at those now. All right, some resources for study, for play along, to practice with. A few things here. First of all, there's a couple of great harp courses. One I have from way back in the day on cassette. I have no idea if that's still available as its original form, but I know he has a website. So you want to look up John Gindick, Gindick. He has a website. He has harmonica camps. He used to have a tape series, probably has it on CD, may have some stuff you can get online and download, I don't know. But he does have a website to check out, and he's a well-established teacher and a good guy to check out. So John Gindick. Any of his materials are worth looking into, especially as a beginner. This is a great course from Eric Clapton's harmonica player that I picked up years ago. If you get the chance to check this out, I don't know if it's available still, if you could get it on eBay, but it's Jerry Portnoy's Blues Harmonica Masterclass. There is a nice book inside with all kinds of information and tips and history. There are 3 CDs, right, with all kinds of techniques. That hata rhythm I taught you way back at the beginning, that came out of this material. So that's a good way to get started on your shuffle. There's all kinds of good stuff in here. And this guy's played with everybody, including, for many years, Eric Clapton, so well worth looking into. Some play-along stuff. These I don't think are in print anymore, but you can occasionally find them online, eBay, places like that, Let Go, whatever. I lost the case for this one in the great flood of 2019, but we were able to save the CD, and that is Band in a Pocket from Five Feathers Music. They put out a bunch of different blues CDs and some other styles of music as well. And this one, I don't have the case. I think it's just called Jam in the Blues or something like that. But anyway, that's what it looks like. Hey, there's me in the CD. There's also a tape series with book that may be available with CD from Steve Houghton. There's a bunch of Music Minus One things you can look into that are blues, and those cover almost any instrument. That was actually a drum course. Steve Houghton did a drum course with charts and all that stuff, and it was based around the blues. But of course, the play-alongs have openings for solos for anybody. So that's something you can check out. Also, Jamie Aebersold's jazz series, one of the first names in jazz education for years and years, Jamie Aebersold. He has some good CDs out. One is just for just standard ear training, and that's Jamie Aebersold Jazz Ear Training. Goes through all the intervals, lots of exercises for you to check out. And as far as playing the blues, he's got so many of these. They were on LP first, then CD. Again, I haven't looked in a long time, but maybe there's some stuff available online as far as direct downloads or whatever, or play-alongs. People have probably posted things on YouTube now because everything's there, right? So go check that out. But you're looking for Jamie Aebersold Blues. This one is volume 42 in all keys. There's some real nice feels here, too, because this is coming from more of a jazz approach. There are some different, chord sequences beyond the basic 1, 4, 5, 12 bars. There's some nice jazz feels, but it's all blues, and your stuff will still work. Your second position cross harp will still work over all this stuff, and it helps you kind of figure out what fits with what, and it makes you a little bit faster grabbing the right harp for the right key. So there's that. There's more, and I'm sure if you look online, you'll find all kinds of stuff, but one online resource that I want to big up is Adam Gussow, an amazing player, broke into the scene with a duo when he was, 17 or something like that. But he's been around for a long time. He mostly does teaching now, and he has a great series online. And I think he's still posting videos, because I remember seeing one just when the quarantine started, so maybe 2 months ago, a month ago, something like that. But Adam Gussow, Gussow. If you don't know him yet, if you haven't looked him up, if you are not hip to his whole course online on YouTube, go check it out. Well worth the time. All right, so there, I think we covered almost everything we talked about that we were going to. We talked about resources. We talked about a few advanced techniques. We talked about the basics. I corrected my big mistake. So a couple of things that I want to share with you from my personal experience. We'll talk about going electric in just a second. Personal tips, though, and considerations. All right, when you do play a lot, saxophonists, they get some problems with their lips sometimes. Trumpet players and cornet players and trombonists, people that play those mouthpiece type of instruments, sometimes get problems with their lips. Like they can split, they can bleed, right? I have found that when I play a lot, especially when I haven't played a lot and then I go back to playing, the corners of my mouth get kind of ripped to shreds. And it's not comfortable. And after a while, and you're playing, you just keep running over that again, and it hurts. So have some chapstick available. Have that on hand. And maybe before you start, especially if you're playing in a band and you're doing a set, get that on first and work in it a little bit. And then that'll help protect your lips from being torn to shreds. The other thing to consider, again, I haven't played professionally out in a long time in this type of venue with a harmonica. I might shave this off if I was doing that, because every time I tried to play with a beard or a mustache, I was tearing hairs out of my face. these these non-boutique, off-the-rack harps, there's often a space between the top plate and the comb, or the bottom here, right? And it can grab your hair and rip it right out of your face, which is really uncomfortable when you're trying to present a sort of a coherent solo in front of an audience. So, just watch the facial hair. If you have a lot of it, you're going to want, and you're going to play a lot, you're probably going to want to at least trim it down. And if you start to feel like, it's happening a lot where you're pulling mustache hairs out, then you may want to consider, not having it or choosing a different instrument. But I'm serious, that used to happen to me all the time. It was very, very uncomfortable, which is why I went with a soul patch back in the day. What else did we not cover? Okay, so that brings us to going electric. Playing through an amplifier, a microphone or an amplifier. You got all your basics down. You're working hard. You're playing along with some things. Maybe you got together with some people and you're jamming. You're sounding good. You're feeling confident. And your next step you want to do is not just play acoustically or sing and step up to a mic with the harmonica, but you want to have a separate harp mic through a harp amp. Try to get that Chicago sound that you've always dreamed of. As someone once said to me, my friend, you are embarking on a fabulous journey. And what he meant was, this has some challenges to it, okay? It takes a while to figure out what works for you, and getting the right mic combination, the right amp. There are a number of choices. When I was playing with the Mighty No Stars pretty regularly, and we were doing a lot of traveling and playing a lot of dates, I went through a bunch of different amp combinations to try to keep up with a 6-piece band with full volume. When we had our organist with us, we had a Leslie speaker, we had a guitarist with a Fender Twin, PA, the whole thing. To try to keep up with that and yet not be constantly feeding back and having major issues with your sound is challenging, right? And I tried almost every solid state solution. I had a PA for a while that I was just running the harp through. I had a couple different guitar amps. It's exciting. But what most people land on is some type of tube amp. And then you can, if you need to lower the power, you can switch the tubes out for something lower power, but still get the sound you want. Mic it up and do whatever you need to do. So I have a couple amps I'll show you for today, and a couple of microphones, but there's so many choices. Do you go with a dynamic mic? Do you go with a classic harp mic, a crystal microphone, a condenser? There's so many different things to try, so many different amp combinations to try. I'm just going to give you a couple today. For practice and fun, these little mini amps are cool. This is the Honeytone. This is one of the more popular mini amps. A great one if you can find an original pig nose. They still make that and they're cool, but the original ones sound really great. That is the small portable amplifier. I think one of the first ones they made back in the 70s. But it's got a case that opens on the front, and so you can change the tone just by the position of the front. It's got a pig nose dial on it. They're pretty cool. Those are cool. My brother has one. He would never give up to me. I've asked over and over again. But here's a Honeytone. These sound cool, and you can see a bunch of videos on YouTube with that, so I'm not going to go through that today. There are some different Fender mini amps you can get. There is a Marshall if you want to go all heavy metal and all that. But there's some different sounds that you can try in the mini amps, and it's somewhat a reflection of what you might get out of the larger sound if you decided to pick, a bigger amp in that category. All right. What I settled on after many years of fishing around for the right mic and amp combination, what I settled on for now are these two things. I actually have an all-day static microphone myself, but the crystal got blown out, and I just have never taken the time to replace it right now. That needs to happen. But Apex makes a copy, a newer version, with, from what I understand, some feedback rejection technology included of one of the old astatic microphones. And this is the 127, the Apex 127. So that's a good choice to try. There are a number of different newer models. What I would suggest you do is stay away from the classic suggestion, which is the green bullet. I know the masters all played that. It's also the only thing that was really available at the time, back in the 50s and early 60s. I have found it unwieldy as far as trying to keep feedback to a minimum. And the one with the volume control, forget about it. So my personal suggestion, you might find something different. There's the Fireball a lot of people like. There's the classic 57 or 58, just a regular old dynamic microphone from Shure. All of those are fine choices. I'm going to play through an old TEAC electret condenser today because it's what I had access to. All my stuff is in storage, and I didn't feel like pulling everything out to get to the mics which are in the back. But you'll get an idea of what it sounds like through an amp. But really, what you want to do is find a Harp microphone if you can. There's reasons that they were settled on as the microphones for harmonicas. So either scouring the internet, antique shops, lawn sales, whatever you can find to get these traditional, early, classic, calling all cars crystal microphones, or get a new version like this right here. Okay, that's the Apex, and there are others. But to start out, you can choose pretty much any microphone. I have an old TEAC electret condenser here, and it's got a pretty chintzy cord, so hopefully it doesn't short out on us during this demonstration. And I'll show you a picture of the amp in a little bit. It's a mini version of the Vox AC20, and it's got several different tubes inside, input and output stages, and you can actually change the output or the volume by changing, or the watts rather, which will affect the volume, from 4 watts to 1 watt to 1/10 of a watt. I often just use this at 1/10 of a watt and have it mic'd up and sent into my monitor, and it's perfect, right? It's not screaming. I'm not dealing with a lot of feedback. It gives me enough chunk when I turn the volume up on the sound, and sounds good. So let's see if we can do something with that right now to close ourselves out for part 3. All right, so you want to get something, if you can, with a nice big flat face like this, because that'll cover more of the harp. But with any microphone, this one, or 57 or 58, whatever, you got to get it up against the back of the harp. And you're going to do the same thing, the C shape, cover it up here, right? And play. And if you adjust the volume and your wattage, you can get differing amounts of distortion. You can probably hear the hum of that amplifier right behind me right now. But you can get different amounts of grit or dirt on the sound. You can also experiment with outboard processing, with pedals, guitar pedals, and that sort of thing. All of that can be fun. I used to run my Harp through a wah-wah pedal, which was cool because it was a different kind of a wah sound. But all of that adds, it detracts from the signal in a way that it doesn't go directly to the amp, for one thing. And for another, it adds layers that can cause feedback issues. So just be aware, every little thing you add to the chain, rather than just a pure harmonica to microphone to amp, is going to cause you some exciting issues. All right, one little tip I didn't tell you before we play ourselves out today, that's really important. You need to learn how to breathe through the harmonica, right? So rather than just, right, you have to breathe through the harp. If you want to play solid rhythm and you want to be able to go back and forth between lines and rhythm, and you're an integral part of that part of the band, you know, if you're not with a big band, maybe you just have a guitar player, bass, and drums, you're going to want to add to the rhythm. But also, that's going to cause you to lose breath pretty quickly if you don't learn how to breathe through the harp. So your air has to come just breathing. So that might be a good thing to practice too. Just might seem a little weird at first, but now after these days of quarantine and masking up, it might not be so bad. All right, so breathe through the harp, practice your single notes, practice your rhythm, practice your bends, practice your little advanced techniques. Try playing along with some music, CDs, records, YouTube. Get with some guys and jam. Eventually get yourself into some type of electric rig that works for you, and enjoy. Practice and enjoy, as they say. Here we go. This is a Blues Bender C Harp, TAC electric microphone, old recording microphone, and the Vox amplifier at 1/10 of a watt, and it sounds something like this.